Welcome to part 2 of Fundraising Fundamentals course of the Nonprofit Bootcamp series. Our presenter today is Amy Retzler. Amy is the co-director of Sara Harvest, a Nevada County organization that educates, inspires, and connects families to fresh, local, seasonal food. Her passion for making sure kids get the best food they possibly can is what fueled her to begin the Farm to School program in Nevada County. She has been involved in guiding the activities of Sara Harvest since October 2008, building the organization from a grassroots community coalition to a respected social profit. She is also a strategic business planning and marketing consultant and is a member of the CNL Coaching and Consulting Network. She was identified as an emerging sage leader in Nevada County, making significant community contributions, and is a graduate of the Nevada County Community Leadership Institute. She enjoys sharing her fund development tips and techniques with food and farming leaders in California to build a funding platform that is relationship-based and not reliant on public funding for program operations. Amy, we are really looking forward to hearing from you today. Thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Great, thanks so much, Susan. I really appreciate that. We're going to just take a quick minute to do a lesson overview of what we're going to talk about in the next 27 minutes. So I'll give you a brief overview of the organization that I work with called Sara Harvest, talk about our financial beginnings 10 years ago, the keys to our success. I'll also touch on shifting your fundraising mindset, sources of funding and strategies that we've used over the years, a major gift fundraising model that we've been implementing for over 4 years now called Benebon. I'll talk about the human capital that it is taking for us to raise funds, and also just investing in 3 things that have made us really successful. So a little bit about Sara Harvest. Susan mentioned that our mission is to educate, inspire, and connect Nevada County families to fresh, local, seasonal food. And today is about sustainable funding with a focus on individual donors for your nonprofit. But first, I'm just going to take you on a super brief virtual tour of the programs just to help set the context for what we raise money for. Our Farm to School program is 10 years old this year, and we serve 26 schools, 9,500 students, with things like Harvest of the Month tastings, farm field trips, garden stands at schools. We bring in guest chefs and farmers to do visits in the classrooms. Some school gardens and orchards are out there. We also do CalFresh or SNAP outreach. And we assist with sourcing local organic food in school lunches that are cooked from scratch for over 1,500 students on a daily basis. Last year, we launched the Farm Institute, and it just contains 3 main elements. There's a Farm Biz course. It's 6 weeks of classes. It's a series for farmers. Farm Crew, this is this picture that you're seeing. It's an 8-month hands-on food production skills course. And the last element of our Farm Institute is Land Match. So where we get farmers that don't have land matched with landowners that want to see their land used for agriculture in a long-term lease situation. We also host events that are designed to build support for our local farming community. We host 8 potlucks every summer. Each one is on a different farm. And this is a great opportunity for the community to gather and get to know the farmers up close. It's also a super way to network with old and new donors alike. And this photo shows that we also host the Sustainable Food and Farm Conference. This year it drew over 600 attendees, everyone from small home gardeners to commercial farmers and ranchers who left feeling really inspired and ready to implement new skills on their farm. We also run a program called Sierra Gardens, and this is a program that teaches people how to grow their own food over a 2-year mentorship period. We deliver seeds and starts and compost, and we offer cooking and gardening classes. There are approximately 1,500 people that have participated in this program over the first 3 seasons. And the last thing I want to mention is just we have organized the Nevada County Food Policy Council. It's a collaboration of members that want to shape the future of our local food system. And we're working together right now to complete a food system assessment and also to review statewide and local legislation here in California and Nevada County to increase support for our local organic farming community. So shifting into individual donor fundraising, I often get asked the question, how did Sara Harvest go from a $2,500 grant in 2008 to a $750,000 budget today that is based mainly on unrestricted funding? So our financial beginnings back in 2008, we received a $2,500 grant from the University of California Cooperative Extension to revive a school garden in the summer of May 2008. There was a lot of sweat equity that went into creating and beginning the Farm to School program, lots of volunteers. And there was this one not so typical volunteer in the summer garden program. She was really shy and quiet, and I did get to know her that summer, and I will be telling you a little story about her later on. This chart shows our donor and volunteer growth over a 5-year period. This is the journey we've been on, growing our individual donor and volunteer base so that our programs don't have to rely on grants to operate. So you can see the growth over these 5 years in the number of people in our database, the number of email addresses, people that we are communicating with, the number of donors. By the end of this year, we will have close to 500. We'll have close to over 275 volunteers by the end of this year as well. And our fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. So this next slide shows a 5-year view of our balance sheet, and believe me, I get that there's a lot of numbers on here, so we're just going to hit the highlights. My point here is just that it's important to understand as a fundraiser the financial health of your organization when you're conducting meetings with individual donors. You might be asked to walk through a profit and loss statement or a balance sheet or even a cash flow statement during an individual donor meeting. So I just want to bring some highlights, show you some highlights from our balance sheet so you can look at the growth that we've experienced and know where some of these important numbers are to some of your major donors. The first line is total assets. It's about halfway down the sheet. I just want to draw your attention to that line. You can see that our assets steadily increased over a 5-year period, 146,000, and at the end of our fiscal year last year, we were just over $500,000 at 565. In the next section, move past liabilities into equity, you can see that unrestricted net assets line. So unrestricted assets are growing rapidly. The next line down, use restricted net assets are decreasing. Those are our grants, our restricted grants. And the next line down is time restricted net assets. Those are pledges that individual donors have made to us to either pay us money this year or in the future years. So when you look at the total equity line, the second line from the bottom, our organization went from 139,000 in equity 5 years ago to over $500,000 last year. And I just checked with our finance advisor, and she let me know that at the end of close February, we're now sitting at 872,000 in total equity. So again, the point of this is to know your financial position as an organization or have someone in your donor meetings that can really speak to this. Oh, here's a little surprise. This was going to be the income comparison over 5 years, but I'll just walk you through it. So apologies for not having that graph on the right. You can see that in 2012, if you look at the yellow and the purple components of the graph, that actually makes up 97% of our income, and that income was all restricted. It was coming from grants or individual donors, and they were telling us exactly the way that they wanted us to use that money. The tiny little green bar was actually our unrestricted amount of money, and that only made up 3% of what we were allowed to spend. So very difficult and challenging to run an organization on that. 5 years later, I'll let you know that 17% of our income is restricted. So we're enjoying a significant amount of money that's coming in unrestricted, and also using earned income. So income that's coming from programs or services that we're operating for constituents and beneficiaries. And that was actually 15% of our income last year. So I want to just talk about some of the keys to our success. The first one that really comes to mind for me is really allowing yourself and your staff to become expert storytellers. This is so important to learn how to tell stories. And I will take you through a handout in office hours that is directly from the Benevolent fundraising model. And it's a great way to structure your stories. The second point is just find a fundraising model that your staff and your board can really get behind. There's a lot of different models out there to look at, and really doing the research ahead of time and getting your volunteers and your staff and your board of directors behind a model is really key. Institutionalizing your programs or your services. So once a program or service is up and running, looking at ways that you can pass along ongoing costs to other people that might be paying for them. And Farm to School is a perfect example of this. We now have all 26 of our schools participating financially with us. Connecting with people that are passionate about what you do. It seems so obvious, but honestly, finding ambassadors in the community that talk about you all the time and how exciting your programs and services are, that's actually, they're out there doing fundraising on your behalf. Shifting your mindset about fundraising, we're gonna talk about that. There's a whole slide on that. And then last, don't be afraid to ask. You're not really sure what's out there unless you can get to that ask. So many of you have probably heard of Lynn Twist. She's written several books on fundraising, and one of her key ones is called The Soul of Money, and I really highly encourage people to find that book and take a look at it. Some of her main points out of that book, and also I saw her speak in Sacramento last year, are three things. Fundraisers are reallocators of resources away from uses that are inconsistent with humanity and towards things we love, right? Fundraisers give people the opportunity to realize what it is that they're doing with their life, what's important to them, and what matters and touches their soul. And truly, this is sacred work. You are capable of moving money and resources to create incredibly impactful situations that improve lives. So honestly, the way we look at it at Sara Harvest is, what are we waiting for? Let's get out there and give people an opportunity to participate. This next slide shows the sources of funding that Sara Harvest has been able to acquire over the last several years. And this is really about where the money is. And I just want to emphasize that 80% of our funding, that's a goal for us to acquire unrestricted funding. We don't want more than 20% of our income coming in to be restricted. For individuals, these are often one-time gifts, monthly donations, or pledges, a pledge that somebody will pay you a certain amount of money in the future. Foundations and trusts, connect with ones that fit your mission and build a personal relationship with them. So I mentioned back in the financial beginnings, there was that shy garden volunteer that I got to work with when we were starting the Farm to School program. Well, after 3 weeks of working with her in the garden, she handed me a slip of paper and she said, I would appreciate it if you would check this out. It was simply a URL. And that URL has led us to over $800,000 in funding based on her connection to her family foundation. So treat every volunteer that you run into as if they are going to be a major donor. Businesses, certainly seek opportunities where being associated with each other is going to spread goodwill for both organizations. We have a food cooperative, a natural food cooperative for here in Nevada County, and one of their goals is to do nutrition education in the community. Well, that's what we do. That's why we exist. So it makes a lot of sense for them to pay us to meet that goal. So they supply us with a very large donation every year. It's good for them. They're accomplishing their business goal. It's good for us. We're accomplishing our mission. Grants. I don't think we'll talk about this too much today, but they are fantastic for starting or growing a program. And we've enjoyed several very large federal grants to build our Farm to School program, but we consciously decided not to apply for them this year. And you always want to measure your return on your grants too, making sure that before you put the time and energy in, you really understand what you're going to get back. And what are the chances of you getting the grant in the first place? Sara Harvest does not write a grant unless we think we have more than a 50% chance of getting the grant. And we definitely don't write grants for less than $10,000 unless we think we're really going to get them. Partner agencies. These are things like local government contracts, schools, or other nonprofits that you might be able to partner with. We partner with the Health and Human Services Department here in Nevada County, And they provide us with funding to do, again, nutrition education outreach for the CalFresh program. That is the food stamp program here in California. We also partner with schools. I mentioned that every student in our Farm to School program, the schools actually provide $2 to $3 per student funding to us to operate the Farm to School program. And earned income is another source of funding, revenue that your programs can earn. These are things like event ticket sales, so we sell tickets to our food and farm conference. We have an educational farm where families can come out and do U-Pick. We earn money off of that. The garden carts in the schools as part of our Farm to School program, they earn about $15,000 to $18,000 a year, and that's all money that gets poured back right back into the program. And the last thing I want to mention is just planned giving. Planned giving is something that is fairly new to us. We're embarking on this territory very quickly, though. It's a very high growth area of philanthropy in the United States. And the three types of planned gifts that we accept right now are bequests. So that's somebody that is just simply leaving you money in their will or trust. IRA charitable rollovers. So when you turn 70 and a half, by law, you are required to have a distribution out of your retirement fund. So people have to give money out of those funds. And then real property is something that we also accept. So that last slide talked about the sources of funding, where the money is. I want to move into the fundraising strategies that we've used. So this is how we've accessed the money. So Benevin, for major giving, we consider major gifts at Sara Harvest $500 and up. Benevin is a system to create sustainable funding. We've made about $300,000 just in a 3-year period using this system, and it really bridges the gap from the more traditional methods of fundraising like special events, grants, direct mail into the world of major gifts. And it really has allowed our organization to take our financial future into its own hands. Now, I am not a Benevin coach, that's my disclaimer, but I do have 4 years of experience implementing the model. And Benevin has a great website and videos if you are interested in learning more about this model. I encourage you to use the free resources that are available on benevin.com. And in a couple of minutes, we'll go over the detail about the 3 stages of storytelling that is directly out of the Benevin model. The next point strategy on this slide is donor retention. So $499 and below, we honestly do not spend a lot of time on this category because we focus 90% of our time and energy on major gifts. Volunteers, they're donors too. You heard me say that one garden volunteer connected us to a family foundation, and they've been with us for 10 years now. So make sure that you're looking at your volunteers as people that not only want to give time, but they probably also want to give money too. In-kind gifts, those are things that, you know, you'll get donations of non-cash. So you might get plants to decorate an event that you're doing, or you might get soil that would be delivered to your farm site. So things like that. Program sales is another one. So again, selling tickets to an event, anything that is going to bring in revenue because you're already operating a program or providing a service to someone, that is your earned income. Business and event sponsorship, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. One of the handouts shows you sponsor a classroom for 1 year in the Farm to School program. So that's a great way for small businesses to be able to participate financially with you. $500 a year will take care of an entire classroom in the Farm to School program. This next one, institutionalizing your Farm to School program, there is an entire handout on that also, and we'll go into a lot more detail on that. But these are things such as, again, inviting a school to pay for program elements like Harvest of the Month. Maybe your superintendent would pay for organizing your time. Maybe there's a partnership that you can build with public health. Maybe there's a partnership that you can arrange with master gardeners. Their volunteers have to do service hours, so why not bring them into your Farm to School program? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning institutionalize your Farm to School program. The Farm to School Sustainability Campaign, again, I'll just reference the handout that we can look at in the office hours, just making sure that you're branding this campaign and that you're out there in the community talking about the financial needs of keeping your Farm to School program running and the benefits to the community of doing so. Grant research and writing, again, it is part of the strategies that we have used. it's becoming less and less important to us, which is fantastic because it's bringing in, our ability to bring in unrestricted funding has really increased, and you saw that on the balance sheet. Professional development is really the last strategy that I want to talk about. It can be easily overlooked, but honestly, your development staff, the people that you are charging with raising the money, it's so important to invest in their future and make sure that they have access to cutting edge tools and methodologies of how to do their job, how to raise money. This next slide just shows you the benefit model. So I want to just quickly walk you through the 4 pieces of this. The first piece is called the point of entry. It's really about inviting people into your organization, giving them the facts. There's always an emotional hook to your storytelling, and capturing names is a big part of the point of entry. The second piece is following up. Once you've invited somebody to come into the organization and listen to your story, you call them, you listen, you get them involved, you ask them 3 very specific questions, and I can go into that in more detail in the office hours as well. The third point of the model is simply asking for money, and not just for 1 year. In the benefit model, there are things called units of service, and units of service are incremental chunks of unrestricted funding that one donor can support. So somebody might pledge $1,000 for 5 years. Somebody might pledge $10,000 for 5 years. We just received a pledge 2 weeks ago, $30,000 for 5 years. You do the math, that's a lot of money from one donor. The fourth part of the model is introducing others. So you want to make sure that you're constantly introducing others, and you're getting the donors that are already involved with you re-inspired. And you do this through putting on free feel-good cultivation events, a minimum of 2 per year. Again, if you're interested in learning more about the Benevin model, benevin.com has a great website, and you can learn a lot on there. Quickly, just to touch on these 3 stages of storytelling in the Benevin model. When you do tell a story, it's so easy to use this template. So you want to talk about before. How was this person's situation? Describe what it was like before working with your organization. What was their life like? How difficult was it? Stage 2 is called intervention. What brought this person into contact with your organization, and what services or support did you provide? And what was your personal observation of them at that time? And the third stage is after. So what are the results of the intervention? Oops, sorry. What are the results of the intervention? How has life changed for this person? What's possible for them now? And what does this person now say about his or her life? And to take it one step further, how are they giving back to others? And I'll just tell a super quick story using this format. We put a Sierra garden into a preschool, and there was a little boy that was really struggling. He would not eat anything during the day, and he was there for 8 hours. His mother dropped him off at 9 in the morning, and she picked him up at 5 o'clock, and he would not eat anything the entire day. Sara Harvest came in, and we established a full organic garden for this preschool. He started coming out to the garden to investigate what was going on. And then lo and behold, he started eating directly from the garden. His mom was ecstatic. She couldn't believe that he was actually starting to eat fresh green vegetables straight off the vines. So that's just a really quick example of using this format and how powerful it can actually be. The last thing I want to touch on is really just staffing as part of our overall fundraising model. You know, it really, you don't have to have a dedicated fund development director on your staff. That is kind of a traditional model of raising money, but for us, instead, we have a really targeted system and a well-developed plan. And we give these 5 staff members all the training they need to stay on the cutting edge of fundraising. You really don't need several full-time people just doing fundraising. And I'm happy to talk more about that in the office hours as well. You know, prior to 2014, we only spent about 10 hours a week doing fundraising. And now we spend about 47 hours a week doing fundraising. So it's just a little bit more than a full-time person, but it's spread across 5 people who have the right skills and the right aptitude to be able to pull this off. I just want to say that it costs a little bit of money to raise a lot. The national average is actually 20 cents to raise $1. Our trend at Sara Harvest, it's been costing us 12 cents to raise $1. So again, take a look at some untraditional or non-traditional models of staffing your fundraising efforts. And the last thing I really want to touch on is I often get asked what were the 3 most critical things you did to achieve the funding position you have today. So again, going from total equity of the organization, 146,000 5.5 years ago, to now today 872,000, with most of that being unrestricted. There are so many things that might seem critical, but these are the 3 things that we keep finding success with. So branding and outreach, we have invested heavily in branding and outreach, and we get out in the community to raise our funds. It's really difficult to raise money when you're sitting behind your desk in an office. You need to be out in the community to be doing this. The second thing is we love to surround ourselves with people that are willing to take calculated risks and just get things done. We love to pilot things. We love to dip our toes in the water in certain aspects of fundraising and see if it works. If it works, great, move on. If it doesn't, try again. And the last thing, I've already mentioned it, but get your staff to become expert storytellers. Get your board, get your volunteers to become expert storytellers, and just simply ask. If you remember the slide from Lynn's list, you are giving people an opportunity to improve lives in your community through your programs. And that is really, really sacred work. You are dedicated to a particular purpose. And I just want to encourage all of you to take the information that you heard in Diana's presentation, and as well as the information today, and move forward with looking into new ways of raising money. So I want to thank the Wallace Center. Thank you, Susan and Jeff, for hosting today. And thank you, Diana, for inviting me. I really appreciate the time. And I wish everyone the best of luck in your future fundraising endeavors.